Okay. Lots of things to say. Not everybody knows that I have a dissociative disorder. Not everybody knows that I have DID, like, explicitly. I'm new-ish to understanding my diagnosis. I learn new things every day, so, and then I think of different things to talk about every day, and then I forget those things. So, first of all, how it works for me, I I have a lot of constant daily frustrating things that I have to go through, that I have to find a way to reconcile with. So it's exhausting. Like, to start off, it's exhausting. I share a brain with other parts of myself, and I'm not always aware of what they're thinking or what they're wanting, and then they will randomly intrude on my inner monologue and like tell me this is what I want, or they will give me feelings and emotions, their feelings and emotions, to try to encourage me to go and do something that they want. And often there'll be more than one that's fighting to get something done or to get some need of theirs met. And then I tend to try to meet everybody's needs, and then I tend to ignore my own needs as a result. So there's a lot of running around the house, kind of looking like a glitching NPC, where like you'll see me start off doing a task and then abandon the task to do a different task, and then get really angry that I'm not finishing the first task because that's what I really want to do, getting mad at myself for that, and then getting mad at myself vice versa for not getting the other task done. You'll see me arguing with myself a lot, but I try really hard to keep it in here and not let it leak out of my mouth, because people don't like when you talk to yourself and then you answer back. So there's a lot of that. And then I get disorientated every once in a while because an alter that remembers like living in a different place will switch in and not know where we are and what we're doing. If you've ever at least seen somebody sleepwalking, or you have sleptwalked, so you know what it kind of feels like, it's a little bit like that, where I will like haphazardly go to a spot in the apartment where my old apartment used to have a closet. I'll walk up to it and then I'll go to open it, and there's just a wall there because there's no closet there, because I don't live in that apartment. It's a different apartment. And then I'll get really confused and wonder where the closet went, and then wonder where all the items in the closet went. So then I have to reconcile with those emotions and try to talk to that alter and say, hey, we've moved, we live in a different place, and like I've packed half of your clothes up, sorry, you'll have to wait till we can get to them. That's something that that came up actually as an example, but it came up just a couple hours ago. So yeah, there's that. And then when it happens in public, it's a little bit scarier because it's a public place. That's intimidating, to suddenly become aware that you don't know where you are, and you don't know why you're here, and you don't recognize it, and there's all these strangers around you and all these noises, and there's no safe place you can really retreat to that you recognize as being yours in some way. Luckily, I've carried a lot of things with me through the years, so my apartment is filled with enough stuff that even if my alters front and don't recognize where we are or don't remember moving, they can figure out that this belongs to them. They can go, okay, that's my picture, that's my bedspread. I obviously live here, that's my dog. I've had my dog for almost a decade, so she's very helpful when that kind of thing happens. So that's kind of the boring, like, everyday aspects of having DID. It's not like a movie, you know. It's a little bit like the dysfunctionality in somebody with like unmedicated ADHD, but with way more dissociation and with like a whole bunch of memory loss. So when you're looking at them, they'll kind of look scatterbrained and jumping from thing to thing, and at least for me, if you're looking at me, and then getting confused really easily distractible, that kind of thing. Because I share a brain with all of these different parts, and they all have different perceptions, and because of that, they have different ideas, and they have different thoughts, and they form their own opinions, and those opinions will contradict each other. I can't ever just do one thing and know for sure that that's what I want to do, because I am not really I am a part of a bigger whole of parts. So I have learned over the years not to make promises that I don't think I would be able to follow through on. I've learned to take everything that I say with a grain of salt. So if I'm like, talking to somebody and I'm like, I always do X, Y, and Z when this happens. I try to correct myself and let that person know sometimes I do X, Y, and Z, but I'll probably contradict myself. Or if someone knows I have a DID, I will just openly say, I, as a part, always do it this way. And then if they know enough about being a system, they'll understand that that means that when they're dealing with me as a body, that I'm not always going to exhibit the behaviors that I say that I'm going to, because I share a body with other parts. So yeah, identity is really, 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 really hard to grasp, and I don't know how to be predictable, even to myself, especially to myself. So it's hard to give my word on something. It's hard to commit to literally anything. A career, what I want to eat for breakfast. Everything comes with friction, and I can either ignore the friction, ignore the signals of my other parts trying to get what they want out of the situation and override it, or I can try to listen to them, listen to one and not the other, try to find a compromise that everybody's okay with. And it really depends on my energy levels, what I'm able to cope with, and if I'm even like conscious and fronting and able to be aware of what's going on around me. So I hate. I absolutely hate that. Like, I wish that was not a part of having DID. I wish that wasn't the case. I very much wish I could just be in one mindset, be one person, be just me, and have all of the memories and emotions that all my other parts have, and have access to them all the time. But I don't. And I say that, but there have been a lot of flashbacks I've retrieved over the memories that have come in the form of flashbacks that I've retrieved over the last 3 or 4 years that were so terrible that, like, I also very much don't want to remember that any of that stuff ever happened to me at all. So I'm one big walking contradiction, and I guess my favorite word is maybe, because nothing is definite. Nothing is definite when you have when you are a DID system, other than the fact that you are going to have different opinions. That's a definite. You definitely are going to have contradicting opinions, wants and needs, perceptions, perspectives. The other thing is, like, simple things like just like color change from alter to alter. So like the way we perceive color. You know how people say everybody sees color a little differently? So like somebody's green might be somebody's blue. Stuff like that. Like how men tend to see color a little bit more simply than women do. Women tend to pay attention to subtle tones a little bit more than men, and that's a stereotype. That's not necessarily true, but like, you know how people say that. Well, I can attest to it being definitely true that people perceive color differently because my alters perceive color differently. So if I'm looking out at something, whether it's like outside my window or if I'm like shopping and I'm looking at an article of clothing or I'm like at an art museum, like whatever, one of my alters has sort of a blunted affect due to their trauma, and their executive functioning skills are like way worse than some of my other alters, and they have depression. And everything looks kind of gray and colorless to them. They think the world is a bit ugly and it lacks color. Everything's sort of undersaturated. And so they don't really notice things as far as color all that well. And then I have another alter that's very color sensitive and gets headaches really easily if they're in a bright and colorful area and doesn't like to wear colorful clothing for that reason. And then I noticed the other night when I was rapid switching, not fun, that one of my alters sees the shade of, I think it's called azure blue, as more of a blue color, and another alter actually sees that same color as green and would put it in the green category. And I've literally gotten in arguments with my boyfriend because he thinks that we're both artists. So if you need context, I was painting when this was happening. I've gotten into arguments with my boyfriend about that color being green and him thinking it's blue. And then it turns out I have alters in my system that agree with him and then alters that don't. So on the smallest level, like just simple things like color perception, there's going to be differences from alter to alter. So very much like we are different people, but at the same time, we share the similarity that we all live in the same body and we've all lived the same life. We've just lived different parts of that life for each other. So it's not the same as being completely distinctly different human beings. I think people who don't know much about DID think that that's what's going on, and that's why it's hard for them to really believe it. It's like over sensationalized. That's not really how it's experienced for most systems. There's a lot of blending and there's a lot of shared senses of self. Like a lot of my alters have similar traits, have similar preferences, and then they all remember different periods of my life that we've all lived. It's all one life, but they hold different parts of that life, and unfortunately that means that each of us, if you were to talk to us at different times, is going to have a different perception of what they've gone through in their life because certain parts are going to be missing from their narrative. So like if you think of a puzzle piece, right, and every alter holds a different puzzle piece, right, and they only have that puzzle piece, they don't know what the full picture looks like, they don't have a picture of what the actual puzzle looks like, then all they have to base their life off of, or what their life was like in their past, is what they can see in that puzzle, or that puzzle piece. So if they have a puzzle piece that holds like a flower and like maybe half of a street corner, they might think that they lived a wonderful life in the garden with their mom. They remember their mom gardening, and they remember this cute little home that they lived in, and they remember living in the city, but not like not living in a bad side of town, living in a safe side of town. And so that's like their life. That's what they remember, and that's what they'll tell you. And you won't know anything about the fact that they used to live on the other side of town, and there were like a lot of murders and break-ins, and police showed up at their neighbor's door a lot, and they lived in fear as a little kid of something happening to them, and it was dark and scary, and they wanted to run away and live in the wilderness away from other people because people scared them. you won't know about that because another altar holds that puzzle piece, and that altar is not going to know that there's another altar that holds a really wonderful perception of their life over here. So then with relationships, as years go on and you're getting to know someone with DID and they share a lot with you, you're probably going to see a lot of inconsistencies in their life story, as well as their opinions and their perceptions on things in the external world. So yeah. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. If you know what that is and you know you've experienced it, just imagine living with that every day. We get a lot of headaches, because literal headaches because of that. It's really hard to reconcile when you are split apart in so many different pieces, and each of those pieces holds a very strong sense of what they think happened and what their life is, and those pieces are so significantly different. So yeah, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in having DID. Sometimes I actually get nauseous, and I've thrown up when I have felt the presence of too many contradicting alters in my body at once, and I've had memories from a very dark period and memories from a very happy period, and they're like smushed together and they don't make any sense because they don't seem to belong to each other. How can I live this life and also live this life? How is it possible to deal with that? Because human beings struggle with that to begin with, and a lot of these memories are from my childhood, and children struggle with reconciling with those kinds of things even more than adults. And so when I get those childhood memories, it's so intense that my stomach starts to spin and I have thrown up. So there's that. But I'm making it sound like it's really terrible. What I'm really talking about is just right now the frustrating bits. Mainly because I don't feel good. I stayed up really late last night. I had a flare-up. I have a chronic illness. I had a flare-up and I wasn't paying attention to the flare-up because we can do that. Another part of DID is that a lot of us can detach from pain and not pick up that we're feeling pain signals and then get sick because we're not listening to our bodies. So that happened, and I woke up this morning and now I feel really, really sick. And so I'm frustrated because I'm sick, and everything that's going wrong with my day is what I'm focusing on because I don't feel good and I don't have the energy to deal with the negative stuff and then focus on the positive. However, there are a lot of beautiful parts of having DID that I wouldn't want to give up. So it's not all bad. It's a complicated relationship. Having DID is not terrible. It's not wonderful. It's terrible and wonderful, and everything in between. And every altar is going to have a different opinion on their diagnosis. I have some altars that don't believe in it, don't believe it's real. And they're also not introspective at all. They don't think about much going on in here. They deal with everyday stuff, and I guess I would consider them kind of simple, but they probably would find that rude and offensive. They're just not deep thinkers. I have a couple of altars that really just don't. They would rather do stuff in the outer world than spend time thinking too much about their thoughts and their memories. Maybe I would say they're a little more shallow, but not in a bad way. I guess that brings me to the other point I wanted to make, which is that when you really understand your system, or you're starting to really get to know different parts of your system, you start understanding people as a whole a little bit more. And it's hard to be overall, I can't say that I have altars that are not judgy, but it's hard overall to be judgy of other people in the external world once you realize what it means to have different perceptions and different feelings in an altered state. So, for instance, I understand now what people mean when they say, You know, that color is not that color to me. I don't know why you say it belongs in the green category. It's blue. Well, on a deeper level, I can understand why some people might not want to think too much and might want to focus on the present moment and might be more sensory based and might prefer to do things that I don't necessarily agree with or really think are helpful. You know, go out drinking, partying, and being more hedonistic, I suppose. I can understand that better because I know that there's parts in me that are like that don't think like me. So, we're, in general, fairly open-minded. Not all the time. Like I said, I can't make any definites. But that is an aspect of DID, is understanding people a little bit better sometimes, because you share a lot in your mind. It's like living with a group of roommates and having to learn to compromise and understand each other's perspectives in order to get along. Except for you're all sharing one body, so if you don't get along, it's fucking hell, and you want to shoot yourself in the face sometimes, but that's okay. Right? I don't know. 20 minutes. 20 minutes is good enough, but there's so many other things I want to say. They kind of fall out of my brain once I start talking and I know I'm being recorded. Yeah.